And good afternoon. Today is June 21st, and it's pretty exciting because we're at episode 8. And I think when Kevin and I started, we really never thought that it would be this fun to put together this webinar live stream that we're doing, right, Kevin?
It's an absolute blast.
Yeah, so we're having a lot of fun with it, and Kevin's with me, and we're going to talk about a reporting part 2. Last week's reporting, we covered the basics. We got started with reports, and this week we're going to kind of take it to the next level because as we talked about last week, there's a lot you can do with reports, and honestly, even these two 20-minute video segments still doesn't even begin to cover all of the capabilities of reporting. An interesting side note that earlier this week on the ServiceNow Slack channel, there was actually discussions about reports. So we're very excited about the prospects of other people who are equally as interested in reporting and functionality and SLAs and response time and all those fancy technology KPI acronym things. And I apologize if you don't know what KPI is. It's Key Performance Indicator. And that's a key phrase when it comes to service management and service desk operations in how the team is doing. So we have our live stream, it's running, we'll keep an eye on it. We have the email address. I double checked to make sure it works. Yes, it works. That's all good. Filter conditions and advanced sort of filtering topics and variables is what Kevin is going to talk about this week. Next week, Kevin will be enjoying a delightful vacation, and I will be covering knowledge management. And if there's one thing I learned growing up watching Saturday morning cartoons, is that knowing is half the battle. It's also red and blue lasers. But that's what we're going to talk about next week, creating, attaching, and updating knowledge. So with that being said, my witty intro is over, and Kevin is going to take us away with reporting. Kevin?
Oh, thank you, Jason. I don't know if I'm going to be able to top that. So, yeah, this week is this is a very deep pool, and we stayed in the shallows last week. This week we're going to try to move to where the feet no longer touch the ground, but there's a lot of material that we're just never going to get to. But hey, that's what that email address is perfect for. If something in here tickles your fancy and you want to know more, please send us an email. So today we are going to talk about some of the features that I skipped and some that I didn't even mention. And to do that, we're again going to start off on the incidents table because that's where we all want to be most of the time. And let's go with a spline. I don't know why I like splines. Splines are just really cool. They've got curves. I think that's why. The first half here, we're going to talk about the primary functions on what make your report useful, and that is going to be our filter conditions. Now, there's 3 buttons in here, and I'm going to get to them in order, but I'm going to add a filter condition. Now, the top filter condition is always, though it doesn't necessarily state it, is always an and, basically, is what it starts off as. And I am going to choose just a variable here. I'm interested in contact type. And so, actually, let's back up. What are these options? Every record, whether it's incidents or otherwise, has fields. Some visible, which is what you use in your day-to-day, some not visible, but there's still data that's being tracked on the record. What this does is it allows you to select conditions off of any of those fields. So contact type, you can be is not, is one of, ends with, does not contain. There's all sorts of fun things you can do here. Now, I'm going to do is one of, because it then shows me a box that allows me to select multiple options. And I'm going to choose just the 2 big ones. I'm just going to say phone and email. And I could run that against the default activity do, but that's not particularly useful. So more often than not, we're going to be looking at things like created, when it was updated, resolved. So let's do created. and we're going to do quarter. And then let's just take a look at that and see what we get to start off with. Now this is going to be, I haven't added a filter condition for a group, so this is going to be every single incident record in ServiceNow from the point that it started. And as you can see, that number climbs very rapidly. So let's get some more power out of this. This is a big number. This doesn't do us any good. So what I really want to know is, well, I've selected email and phone, but I don't want them separated out. So I'm going to use my group by muscles here. And we're going to split that out. And now we've got 2 lines. And then let's use the AND function here. This is what this is going to do, is it's going to call up another filter condition that allows us to add different rules. So I am going to role play somebody who's looking at KPIs for an entire unit. So I'm going to say, oh, what do you say, Jason? You want to use IT Express as an example?
How about if we use all of IET, or you think that's too big? Is that going to be too big for your report?
No, I don't think so.
Let's do that.
Okay, so and then this will actually let me to show a little modification here. So we want the assignment group. Now, we don't want to use is, because there's no actual incidents that resolve or exist within the IET group. As those of you know who's had some experience, the IET or COE or DSS, those all operate as a top-level group for organizational purposes. There's no records that should be stored in there. So what we want to do is we actually want to do starts with. And because of the naming conventions that we've set, that makes this really easy. I can just say IET, and that's going to grab every single IET group. And now, because it's an AND, it's applying both of these conditions at the same time. All right, so there are, now we're down a few incidents left, but we really don't have that much less here. So we're still a little kind of
It's interesting
too
that
much.
phone overtook email. So it's always fun to look at the data in real time, even if you're still not interested in this final outcome.
So, well, we might be able to fix that. So there isn't anything in here that's, this is everything. Well, I know for a fact that we have tickets in here that have been resolved as spam.
Oh yeah, good point. Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of anything that's been marked as spam. So and now spam is a resolution code. So resolution code is, is not solve spam. Now you think, I'm going to run that. I'm good. I'm done, right? Problem. The way that ServiceNow works is if you call a condition against a field, it is going to assume that that field has a value. So, in this case, by saying resolution code is not solve spam, it is going to exclude every single incident that has no resolution code. So to fix that, we're going to use the OR function here. Resolution code is not. Resolution code is, oh, I left it at none at the top. There we go, is none. So, and now this is where our OR comes in. So it's now calling, we have an AND here, but if it's none, it's going to go ahead and add that to our list. Now there's a higher level of order of OR here, and as I suspected, phone retook emails. We've been dealing with a lot of phishing emails this year. It's been driving our spam value up quite a considerable amount, so it was definitely interesting to see those numbers.
Yeah, that huge dip in, what is that, late March?
That would have been fourth quarter last year. So there's another OR clause to call attention to here. And I don't have a really great example to test it, but I at least want to point it out. So right now we're operating within one add filter condition set. we can actually add another. So we can do something complex here, and then while there's an or that exists within this condition set, we can add an or clause. Now, this is different than the or you would add on one of the filter conditions, because it basically says, okay, I'm going to look at all of the ands and ors in this top subset, or I'm now going to look at the conditions in this bottom subset. And this bottom subset can have its own additional ands, its own additional ors. This gets tricky because the more variables you add, the more nuanced you have to be with your selection. You have to be really careful because there could be unintended side effects of saying or and this, because you're either going to suddenly lose all of your incidents. You usually know when you selected something wrong when you get 0 results. Well, shoot. Okay. Or you know you've done something wrong when you hit run and it churns and churns and churns and you have 300,000 results. Oops. So, and then the third option for filter conditions is adding a sort field. Now this is really advantageous for list views because you can tell it which variable to sort by, even if that object isn't being used or that filter view isn't being used as a column. It's relatively self-explanatory if you've ever used sort order stuff. I'm not going to go too deep into that one here. What I want to now get into is some additional advanced settings beyond what we have here, and this is going to be some really interesting stuff. So I do have to change the kind of the structure here. We're going to go back to the top, and under created per quarter, there's a couple different aggregations here. Now count's going to be the common one, but there's a couple of really awesome usages for other variables. So I'm going to click on average. Now this doesn't mean the average amount of tickets created per quarter. You're actually assigning an average value to this report based off of incidents that were created per quarter. So a common one that people look for is business duration. Now what this is the time in which an incident can be worked on by a unit. So this is going to be business hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. So when you have a business duration of a certain value, that is how long that incident took to complete within those variables. And so I'm going to run this, and it's going to make some kind of crazy changes to our graph here. So, okay, now one of the complex things that, and this took me forever to wrap my head around, this time structure over here is additive. It's not some smart calculation on the overall. So what we've done is because we said business duration, it's only counting those business hours. Well, this graph is going to be additive. It's going to say, all right, your business duration is 1 day, 3 hours and 46 minutes. That's not a Monday or a Tuesday. That is 27 business hours. That's what, 3.5 days almost?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's half a week. That's something that can trip up really, really easily because it looks like you just went, oh wow, well we completed all of our tickets in a little over a day. That's fantastic. Well, no, that's actually way more than that.
Right. Which makes, unfortunately, that 4-day, 1 hour look even worse.
Yeah. Now, not everyone uses ServiceNow the same. It's a tool that everyone can commit to and use, but there are certain practices that other groups use. Some groups tend to use it maybe for more inter-office communication on issues, or use it for more development work and things like that. Though we're looking at incidents, the time to resolution isn't necessarily reflective of records that are specifically customer facing. And so there are a lot of things you can do with average and sum, as well as what you can average out. I'll leave that to your exploration. We're winding down the clock here. I have one more thing that is going to open up a lot of reporting to people who feel comfortable with this level of work, and that is nested functions by show-related fields. Now this function exists in various places, but I'm going to use it under a filter condition to show kind of its power. I'm looking at all of these reports here that are in IET, but I want to know of the callers who have these incidents have existed for. I want to know what their department is. Now, you say, well, that's easy. You just pull up what the department code is. Well, there's variables that aren't necessarily that straightforward. And I'll use one as an example here. So I'm going to add a filter condition, and I'm going to say, well, in ServiceNow, you'll notice that some people have this, what we call the supported by flag. They'll say supported by IET, or supported by FOA, or supported by, various other departments. I want to know, of all of these incidents, how many of them were listed as supported by COE. Now, that variable doesn't exist on the incident record, but it does exist on the caller record. So the first thing I have to do is I have to scroll to the very bottom of our filter conditions and show related fields. And then it's going to reset my view. And then as you scroll down, you're going to see these arrows. These are conditional fields that allow you to look into the record that stores that information. So I'm going to come down here to caller. It's my scroll skipped it. Caller user fields, because the true name for a caller in ServiceNow is a user record. So I'm going to select that. And again, it's going to reset my view. And now it's going to be indented ever so slightly. If you use it more often, you'll start to notice it, but that just kind of indicates that you're looking at a field that's been looking at another record. So now that I'm looking at caller, I'm going to say primary support group. And then not is, because we're not going to be specific. We're going to say starts with COE. So now I'm making a call on an incident report to the caller user table to pull additional information for my report. And I'm going to run this, and this now shows us because we've got the average time. This is average time to resolution for all incidents in IET that are primarily supported by COE. This nested thing, you can nest as many times as you'd like. Heck, I think it actually will loop if you find a couple of records that feed into each other. So careful how nested you go, but you can go quite a few ways in. It is the ultimate expression of reporting power in ServiceNow. And I encourage everyone interested in reporting or numbers to explore this, because it opens up a world of information that may not be readily available on a direct table that you're looking at. How are we on time, Jason?
You have about 2 minutes if you wanted to cover anything else.
Sure, okay. So a little less kind of ominous in its depth is something that's a little fun here, actually. And I'm going to use the nifty minimize up here in the right-hand corner. When you have a really long report, it can get kind of tiresome scrolling up and down. I'm just going to hit minimize, and all that goes away. Well, I don't like the way this table looks. Like, yeah, it's got my data. So next to the type, you're going to see the small gear wheel. And this is going to pull up your style chart. There are various options here that you can use. You can change titles, you can change color, you can change orientations on things. The legend is particularly neat. I like the way that it works. So right now the legend is just this entry down here on the bottom. Well, I don't like it at the bottom. I'm going to move to the left side. And I'm going to put it at the top. And I'm going to put a border around it. Now, of course, that doesn't work instantaneously, so I have to rerun the report. But hey, look at that. I've now called out what information I'm looking at in a slightly more visible location. This works really well if you're going to be using the save as PNG JPEG function and presenting this to somebody. There's a ton of really cool offset, font size, grid functionality here that can take a confusing, mediocre report and turn it into something that's immediately presentable to a group of people without needing to massage it in some other reporting tool. So it's a phenomenal tool to use, but it's not critical to your data. And so Yeah, I think we're going to stop there. I think we've touched on a lot. Again, I encourage you, if some of this has tickled your fancy and you've got questions on how to leverage some of this, shoot us an email.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I think the only closing remark that I would offer for reporting is it can be a little intimidating at first, but once you start to figure out what things do, and the really good news about reporting is you really can't break anything.
Nope.
You're not going to impact the data that you're reporting on by running a report. You're not going to change how long it took to resolve a ticket. You might accidentally report on something that you didn't want to report on, and you can just change it. So there's a lot of options here, and as Kevin stated, you can go as deep or as shallow as you want to achieve a result. And certainly, if you ever have questions, don't feel afraid to ask either on Slack or via email to either us or ITSM at. We would hate to have a situation where someone can't get something done because they didn't know how to do it in the tool. That would be frustrating for everyone involved, you included. Thanks for listening. Kevin, like I said, is on vacation next week. I'll be doing knowledge management. Then Kevin will be back the following week, and I think we're going to look at surveys and Service Hub. We've got a couple more episodes on the first season, and then we're going to start talking about a second season and seeing what that looks like.
Look forward to it.
So everyone have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. Thanks for tuning in.